All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Kate Sawicki, and I am one of the Alumni and Family Relations Officers in Alumni and Family Relations. And so I mostly work with alumni, but I'm here today with some wonderful folks in the Career Center who I would love to have introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Jankowski. I'm the director of the RISD Career Center.
Hi, everybody. My name is Susan Andersen, and I'm the Associate Director of the Career Center. And welcome. Happy to have you with us this evening and excited to talk with you about Tech Trek.
Yes.
Okay. This session is being recorded, and we also have the closed captioning or live transcript on for folks as well. So tonight on our little agenda for this info session, we're going to talk about what Tech Trek is, how attending could be helpful to selected participants, when it's taking place, the cost of the trip if you are a successful candidate, and all of those details. We're going to go over the process to apply, and we're going to wrap up with that timeline for application to attending. And then we will open it up to questions. And so feel free to put questions that you have as they pop up into the chat, and we are going to go ahead and answer all of those at the end of the presentation, because we think that most of the questions will be answered, hopefully, in this presentation for you. So what is Tech Trek? Tech Trek is a program. It's about a week-long program to the Bay Area in California, where students will have the opportunity to meet with alumni and employers in the tech industry in both San Francisco and Silicon Valley. This trip has been a collaborative effort between the Alumni Association and the RISD Career Center, as well as the RISD and Tech Affinity Group. And we also have a couple of alumni clubs in San Francisco and Silicon Valley that may be hosting events or maybe in attendance at things throughout the trip as well. It is scheduled to take place before the fall semester, and so it will be from Monday, August 22nd to Friday, August 26th.
Also to note for everyone out there, you might have heard of Tech Trek before, depending on what year in school you are at RISD, because this program was just about to go about 2 years ago. And then, of course, we were hit with the pandemic. So although the program will be new to actually go out to the West Coast, it is something that was very, very close to happening. So I can't tell you how excited we are with Kate, Susan, and I to see the program happening again, and it's going to just be awesome.
I just want to second that point, Kevin. It is very, very exciting that we're talking about the trip again. One of the points Kate made just as a moment ago in the opening, why would you be interested in this? Really the genesis of the idea for Tech Trek came from a conversation with alumni about the importance of students really understanding what it's like to be a designer in tech. And what better way to really understand that than to see for yourself and have the chance to walk into a company like Facebook, for instance, or another tech company, and see what's happening on a day-to-day basis, what designers do, what's the environment look like, what's Silicon Valley look like, if you really wanted to aspire to work and potentially live there. So again, we're very excited to be able to talk with you about this evening and the potential for this trip in the coming months.
This is a perfect segue into why would you want to attend? And so, as I said, it's about a week where you'll be attending on-site company visits, and this is at various sized employers. We're looking for some of those startup or foundational type businesses, as well as large scale established businesses. We want to intersperse the week with panel and casual conversations with alumni speakers, socializing with alumni, doing that networking, skill building, professional development that Susan was really alluding to. And we're really hoping to also be able to include a portfolio review within this week. So students will have the opportunity to speak with and learn from the RISD alumni and community and take part in networking events and skill building opportunities throughout the trip.
So I think sorry to interrupt, Kevin, but just to reinforce this point that I would say that being involved in the trip is also about career exploration and identifying the roles in tech for design, and there are many, and really, again, getting a deeper understanding for what it would mean to be a designer there, literally there in those places, but also a designer in tech broadly speaking. So there is definitely a career element in this, which is naturally why, Kevin and I have been involved in supporting Kate with this program, and we're very, very involved in the initial phase of it a couple of years ago. So just to clarify, it is really about your career. It's about your career direction. It's about career exploration.
Yeah, and then to add on the alumni side, which Kate knows so well, it is really amazing how many alumni from RISD are in the tech field. And it really is a testament that this education at RISD can be applied to all these major tech companies. And that's one of the things you will see. So much so that, and it's great, RISD's created a tech affinity group, which Kate mentioned, and that group is supportive of alumni in the tech field or alumni and students who want to go into the tech field, which is, again, a part of the genesis of the trip. So it's great.
Thank you. So I know you're probably curious what kind of companies we might visit. I do want to preface this that none of these sites have been confirmed yet. We're still in conversation given that this trip is in August and that's still a ways away. But we are working with contacts at Meta/Facebook, Googleplex, Hyundai Cradle, Apple, Design Map Incorporated, and Uber, among some others, as potential companies that we may be visiting or involved with during this trip.
Yeah, I just want to add, and I can't resist, because the Design Portfolio Review, which is a program that we're running through the Career Center. Some of you may be familiar and know about it, but it is our annual spring Design Portfolio Review that involves about 120 companies and organizations. And typically, Meta, Facebook, Google, Apple, and others like them attend, and we're very happy to say that they are in attendance this year. So there's a kind of a through line here of connection of companies to the Career Center through their interest in the design review, of course, interest in meeting with students, interested in recruiting students, and again, Tech Trek and the affiliation back to those companies. So as Kate mentioned, it's early stage right now in terms of really mapping out visits in August. We're still, navigating that. But I just feel very encouraged by the fact that 3 of these companies are already, and Hyundai maybe 2, we're not certain of that, for design review, will be in attendance. So there is this kind of synergy that way between the companies and RISD, and I just wanted to make sure that you had awareness of that.
Thank you, Susan. So another top question, what is the cost of this? And so I know that this is a text heavy slide, and so I appreciate your time on this. The students who are accepted into the program, there is a non-refundable $100 program deposit fee to hold your space to participate. All the program expenses that are directly related to the program will be provided for students. So that includes hotel accommodations, travel to and from the Tech Trek sites, daily meals, anything else that is program related. If a student forgets something, that they need during the trip, or they want to do something after, the formal program for the day ends, whether it's sightseeing or going out to get to the clubs or anything, that is something that students will be responsible for. We also understand that this is going to be taking place before students are in Providence for the academic year. And so if students are fairly local to Providence, RISD is more than happy to book that travel for those students and work with them to do that. If students are departing outside of Providence, they will be responsible for booking and paying for those flights on their own, both to and from San Francisco. However, we will be able to reimburse students up to $325 total for those flights to and from after the trip has taken place. And that has to do with the procurement rules and reimbursement rules through RISD. Now, we understand that this might still be a barrier for some students, that those flights and that non-refundable deposit may seem really scary or untenable. And so we do have an essay question, we'll go over that in a little bit, that is optional for students to fill out if they feel that they need additional financial assistance. And so the committee will be able to review that and see what other additional financial support we're able to offer to those students. And one final little thing is that students will be sharing a double room on the trip. And so, there'll be 2 bedrooms, but 2 students will be in those together. Susan and Kevin, anything you wanted to add?
I think that covers it well. I mean, one of the cool things about the trip is that a lot of the costs are covered. In fact, the majority of the cost. And that's a really wonderful arrangement that comes out of institutional advancement at RISD to be able to provide this opportunity.
Yeah, and I think I would add to that. Our hope is that the students that apply and are selected to go will really kind of form a nice cohort, unto themselves, meaning that this is going to be a very interesting and memorable shared experience. And the people that students will meet throughout the trip will be memorable meetings. When you're, if you can imagine participating and having a meal with other students and with other alumni, perhaps, or with those who are going to be attending the program, Kevin, Kate, and myself, to just talk through like what happened today and what did you take away from a conversation that was had earlier in the day, or some notable experience that you had, I think is really a very unique thing. And so when we're talking about traveling together or meeting up and being together as a group and even sharing rooms, in the case of accommodations, this really is about a shared experience. And I just wanted to, maybe saying the obvious when I mention this, but I do think that is a significant advantage in a lot of ways to having this opportunity versus you independently kind of going to visit someone you may or may not know, or, family, friends, or, a friend of a friend in Silicon Valley and kind of striking it out on your own and doing a similar kind of thing independently. That has its own advantages for sure. But I think the uniqueness of this happening in a group situation is really notable. And I just wanted to kind of call that out. And also to just echo Kevin's comments about it's really a wonderful thing that there are the financial resources at RISD to be able to offer this trip to students without a high cost. It's really remarkable and very exciting to me again that we're in a position to be able to do that for you, and just really hope that you're as excited as we are about that possibility.
If not more, right?
Yes, more would be even better.
Awesome. So now probably one of the most important parts, what is the process to apply? And so first I want to talk about eligibility. So right now, the students who are eligible to participate are students who will be students in fall 2022. So if a student is graduating in June 2022 and is not returning for the fall semester, they are not eligible to apply for this opportunity. So rising sophomores, rising juniors, rising seniors and fifth year students, and then non-graduating graduate students are all eligible. And so like I said, students must be enrolled in that fall 2022 semester. And so if students are on leave right now, they just need to be readmitted, for fall 2022. Non-US citizens are eligible to attend, and as part of the process, students do have to have a current resume, online portfolio, and LinkedIn profile as part of the submission, in addition to some other things, which we'll go over on the next slide as well. On the right-hand side of this slide, you can see the selection criteria, and so, the application materials and the student readiness, those are two of the pieces that we will be weighing applications on. And so all of this information is available on the TechTrek website in our guidelines document if you want to review this in more detail and take a deeper look at it. But really, we want to make sure that the students who are attending understand what TechTrek is, are excited about it and want to gain something from it, and are able to be articulate in their essay responses, and also are, demonstrating an interest in technology and in creativity, and are ready to engage with our alumni and company hosts, and represent RISD in a really positive light, while we're out in California.
Yeah, and I think in light of everything Kate just said, keep in mind that your application and the questions you respond to, which we're about to go over, will be reflective of that professionalism that we want the participating students to have in being at these company sites, in being among alumni, and again, representing RISD as well. So keep that in mind.
I just put the link to the TechTrek overview and the guidelines, which are on that page, in the chat, so you all can take a look when you're ready or have access to that easily.
Thank you.
Yep.
So the actual process and the components. So over here on the left-hand side, you can see the 4 essay questions. So those first 3 essay questions are required of all applicants. And that 4th essay question is optional. And so that is the one about financial assistance, if that is something that you require. All items, so your resume, anything that you're attaching, does need to be a PDF upload. And the link to that application is on here, and that will be going live later tonight, early tomorrow morning. So other pieces of the application, the resume, a LinkedIn profile, a portfolio, and your unofficial transcript. And so again, we've got links here to the Career Center's website for helpful tips and tricks on how to make all of these the best possible. You're also very much encouraged to stop in at the Career Center and talk to an advisor and get some help on your application if needed. And then we've got some tips on the bottom here, about the actual application, just making sure that things are in the PDF, that they're in the right order that you want, that things are nice and neat, that you've followed directions, you've reviewed the guidelines carefully, and have really made sure that you are meeting all of those expectations, and that you are attaching things appropriately as you are submitting your application.
Can I just make a quick comment, Kate? I wanted to just point out on question 2, the question that we're asking is, what are your professional goals and what do you hope to gain from attending TechTrek? So that might be a daunting question. You might not be able to articulate your professional goals at this moment. That could seem like a very large question that has many different answers. So I just want you to be reassured that the response to that question should be really, what do you aspire to do? And that could be a variety of things, and you can say those things. It's not as if you have to identify, I want to be this and I want to go on this trip for this reason specific to this job that I would like to have someday. It might be that, but it might be something different and a little less, kind of crystal clear. And I just want to encourage students who would be applying to think how to articulate best what your goals are right now, understanding that they might change. So not to be put off by the fact that you have to have like a very specific goal in mind. It's always good to have a goal in mind. And that's why we're asking. But it's not that you have to be accountable, to only that goal, and that's the sole goal you have in mind for your future. I hope that makes sense. I just wanted to I think give you some perspective on the fact that it's understandable if your goals are in formation. You're a student, and that that's very real.
Right. But at the same time, too, obviously the trip is Tech Trek, so you may not know and don't have to know that bigger picture, but what is your engagement and interest in tech fields, tech companies, the tech environment? So that aspect, which of course relates to the essay questions, will be an important one to address to the selection committee. So keep that in mind.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you both. All right. And so timeline, tonight we've got our info session. The application opens, this morning very early. The application will close on March 31st at 12 p.m. So you'll have the morning if you are a last minute person to be able to submit that. And then the committee will be working together in the month of April to review all of the applications and really make a selection on, who will be attending the trip. And so we will be notifying participants by May 3rd by email. And then we have about a week that we ask that students to consider it, make sure that they still want to go, that nothing has changed, or perhaps they've committed to an internship and now they need to work to see if they need to change their last date in order to attend this, make some of those negotiations, and then let us know that they in fact are going to be coming. And then we will work with the students who are selected to do an orientation in person before students head home for the summer or wherever you are going. And then we will do at least one check-in, if not two check-ins over the summer via Zoom, so that we can just get together, talk about the trip, the schedule, reflect on what we're hoping to get out of it, expectations, just some of that before we go, checklist type of things.
I will.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I'll add about deadlines because we do deal with a lot of awards and deadlines. I think it's really good to fake yourself out on the deadline and imagine the deadline a day or even several days before the deadline. Almost put like a fake sticky note up. Just because, and we see this a lot, people do apply at the very, very last minute. And inevitably, something can go wrong in the application process. And that's the worst feeling, to pull a lot of things together and then, have something crash or something go wrong. So I really encourage kind of faking out the deadline, even when you know it's the deadline, to try to get it in at least a day or a couple days earlier. Just because we, again, do see this a lot.
Yes, definitely. I would second Kevin on this, is to pretend that the deadline is a couple days before and put it in your calendar as that date. And that way you don't have to worry about it. Even if you forget that it was actually the 31st, then you're covered because it was already a couple days earlier in your calendar.
Right.
Awesome. Great. So that ends our formal presentation. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so that we can chat more about any other questions that you all might have.
So at this point, what you can do is just unmute and ask your question directly. or if you're uncomfortable with that, you can put it in the chat. We'll read the question aloud. Please, this is a great opportunity to put out those questions and get answers and feedback from us.
So for clarification, how many people are being accepted to go on the trip?
That's a great question. We are planning to accept up to 20 students.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat that asks that, as well as is the total cost of the trip 100 plus the flight ticket?
So it depends upon where you're leaving from, because if you're leaving from Providence, then it is just the $100 deposit. If you are leaving from anywhere outside of Providence, you will be responsible for paying for your flight up front, but you will be able to be reimbursed up to $325 for your round trip after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
Has housing been decided yet, or like, can you give us any like additional information on like where we would be located, that kind of thing?
We haven't booked any hotels or anything yet. That we will be staying in hotels. It's really going to depend upon what the sites are, because we want those hotels to be as close to the sites as possible to limit our worry about travel. I will say that given we are planning on going to both Silicon Valley and San Francisco, we will be staying in at least 2 hotels for that trip, one in Silicon Valley and then one up in San Francisco, because that difference in time is significant. And so we do want to be closer to that. I will say for select participants, we're hoping that we can get to know each other a little bit better, so that if there's somebody on the trip that you'd like to stay with, that you have that opportunity to select each other to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to kind of follow up on Kate's point, and for those of you who don't know, downtown San Francisco is a large city, and the area of Silicon Valley is probably about an hour and a half, depending on what your destination, but it's about an hour and a half away. So it's a very long day trip in a lot of traffic. And that being said, there's a logic in just like having visits in San Francisco for one portion of the trip, and then having visits in the Silicon Valley region for another portion. So that's also, and there will be an opportunity to be traveling ground transport from place to place too. So a lot of time will be spent, working and moving as a group. Just to clarify that. There is another question in the chat, and that is, what are the suggested pages/work to be included in our portfolio? So kind of how many images should the portfolio include?
I think regarding that question, it really is, you're not going to be selected on your portfolio, but the portfolio work is a supplement to the overall picture of who you are and the things that you're writing about. And if you have work, of course, that's tech related, then show it and talk about it. But please know, and this is really important, you do not have to have a portfolio, a website link that is like, whoa, this is a person definitely going into tech. There's very, very high encouragement to have all majors, represented, different disciplines. This isn't about just design disciplines. And so again, don't feel like you have to reconfigure your portfolio or reconfigure a website. It's more about getting a sense of the work you're creating at RISD in a picture with everything else, which is important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, back to the other points that I think Kevin was making about the responses to the essay questions. There's an opportunity to really explain not only why you're interested in this program and your goals, your professional goals, as I was saying earlier, but giving kind of the context for why you're sharing a certain type of work as part of your application, And you can reference, why you're sharing that work in response to the essay question, if that helps.
Right.
The other thing I was thinking about is that because this trip is intended to give you exposure to alumni and other professionals in the tech industry, and as Kate mentioned, potentially an opportunity for a portfolio review, that means that any work that you would be submitting in your application could be work that you would have a portfolio review about if you wanted to.
Right.
So just if you think about like, what would you say to somebody about this work in relationship to your interest in tech? That's reason enough to put it in your portfolio for the application. And finally, I would just say the other element that's really important in the application is that you obviously put your best effort forward. You format the work in your portfolio in the most presentable way that you can, the most professional way you can, without within reason, I'll say. Good strong images formatted just as well as you can, so that it's very easy for a reviewer to see them, and to just follow the directions on the application. They're not really difficult or challenging, but it is surprising how often students just thought they had it right, and you do see that there are like things that are missing, or like you can't understand how they didn't do this when it was so straightforward in terms of the application instruction. So just be careful. I would say just be careful and thoughtful about your approach, and your best work would be the thing that I would say across the board. Just your best effort.
I would also add, in relation to things that are required, and this is one that you might need to spend a little time updating and improving, is the LinkedIn profile. And the tech industry does use LinkedIn very heavily. There's a lot of networking that happens through LinkedIn. So if you've got, you've had a great resume, and you're LinkedIn, yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, but I haven't really given a lot of attention. This is where you might want to spend some of the time before submitting, all of your application materials, updating. Again, not a ton of time, but just polishing it, and definitely duplicating what's on your resume should be in the LinkedIn profile, and also maximizing some of the components. So as Kate said earlier, we do this all the time at the Career Center. So, if you want to schedule a meeting and go over, your resume, polish that, go over your LinkedIn profile, show the portfolio, this is exactly a great time to do it before you make that full application. And John, I see that you've got your hand up for a question.
Hi. Yeah, I had two questions. So the first question was basically about whether or not, because I know in the past we were looking, or the Tech Trek had some locations that were more venture capitalists or capital firms, and kind of thinking, or I was wondering if that was also kind of on the radar again, because I'd love for the chance to kind of visit those kinds of spaces. And the second question was also about whether there would be kind of a variety of kind of creatives also kind of constituting like creative technologists, and maybe like 3D kind of designers, and thinking about all the various creative roles. And I was wondering, like, I guess your thoughts on that, and how you're kind of going about creating like a diverse kind of take while like visiting these companies, as opposed to just seeing like if we'd be seeing like various kinds of creatives.
Those are great questions, John. So for your first one, in terms of the venture capitalism, we have one site, but it's more of a backup site at this point. Whereas if one of our other top sites aren't able to commit or, provide for us, that we would then be going to that site to see if they're able to, have us there or be a part of the program. So I will say that we don't have any right now. We may, but it really depends upon how the other sites shake out. And in terms of how we're selecting our sites or the folks that we're really having as a part of the program, I think we're really trying to get a diverse group of alumni to present to students and talk about their trajectories and how maybe some are linear and some are not linear. And so that's really why we've also tried to include some of those panel opportunities and those more casual conversations and networking opportunities, because we want to make sure that while students are there, they are getting a wide range of experience and background and knowledge from our alumni in that community. And so that's kind of how we're hoping to infuse it, is not just in the sites, but in those other opportunities as well, that you'll get to meet somebody who's maybe loosely in tech or is kind of doing some really interesting work in tech, but might not be at one of those, larger companies, or they're kind of they're doing it on the side. We're hoping to be able to give you that wide range in those ways.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just FYI, everybody, I put the link to the Career Center Meet With Us in the chat. So if you wanted to schedule a time to meet with an advisor, you have the link to do that. We also have drop-in advising as well. You can stop by for quick questions if that's helpful to you outside of Tech Trek, to just have a quick question with our peer advisors and or a staff person.
Other questions that you have? Anyone? Is this it doesn't have to be a question, but just thoughts on the program? Are you excited about what you're hearing and seeing? Is this kind of meeting your expectations? Like, what is this Tech Trek about, and how will I be involved? If any of you have feedback or insights about that, that would be great to hear too.
Yeah, it would be really great to know what your expectations were in sort of attending this evening, about the types of companies or about the nature of this trip, because it helps us to just think more deeply about it and gives us other material to consider. So don't hesitate, please, if you have thoughts.
Yep, and saw the question come through
Yes.
again about the number of participants, and I think another student answered, but they're looking at up to 20. Yep. Which by the way, is double what Tech Trek would have been 2 years ago. So it is a larger cohort. And I think, as Kate and Susan mentioned earlier, that sense of camaraderie and being together as a group is going to be really cool. It's going to be a bigger group, but about 20 students. Other, yeah.
I know Silicon Valley is kind of like a larger area. Are there any like specific cities like we're hoping to plan to go to?
Yeah, so it looks like right now most of our sites are in the Menlo Park area and then in Mountain View in Silicon Valley. And so those are kind of where we're really looking. Again, it could still change, but that's where most of our sites that we're in conversation with are right now. That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any more thoughts? Any more questions?
I think just maybe to take that response the next step further, Kate, and to the I think it was Brianna who asked it. What also is really I always really enjoy about visiting that part of the U.S. is that things are far apart, and it's different from being on the East Coast. If you've been to New York or Boston, and it's just like, you can get to New York and Boston very easily on a train. It's packed full of buildings. It's got, some beautiful vistas of water, depending on where you are in New York or Boston. But in California, it is very large and vast. And one of the, for me anyway, one of the really enjoyable experiences of being there is this experience of the place and traveling from place to place and getting to see what is actually desert. It's not, I don't know why I was so surprised about that the first time I visited, but it was like, wow, it is really dry here. Well, it is, it's on the edge of the desert, and that kind of experience too of just being in a place that's different from what you may know typically, I think is just awesome in the true sense of the word. And it gives you different perspective, for sure. So just again, another, I think, kind of benefit of being able to literally go someplace and experience it rather than, have a Zoom call with somebody who's in an office space or even in an outdoor space that's across the country from you. I do think there is actually something that's very advantageous about being in both San Francisco and Silicon Valley and sort of seeing that contrast and just having a reaction to it as you think about your future and where you might want to land and live in after you graduate and wherever it is that you work.
Absolutely.
Hi, I have a question. What kind of department are those RISD alumni working? Like graphic design, or like what kind of department? Are they working at a tech firm?
Yeah.
So, Susan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's so interesting that you asked the question because it's ranging. It's actually pretty broad ranging. So there are alumni from graphic design, there are alumni from industrial design. In particular, there are alumni from illustration that I can think of right off the top of my head. And that being said, there are probably other majors represented that I'm not naming at the moment. But the reality of working after graduation especially is that so often your RISD education is the foundational experience that you have to build your portfolio and really nurture your creativity. And as you move through your educational experience at RISD, gain more exposure through internships and through studio experiences, you begin to form kind of your own personal direction. And that direction may take you into tech. It may take you into some other area where if you're a graphic designer, you're bringing your graphic design bent to that. But the people that you work with are likely varied in terms of their backgrounds. And in tech, that is absolutely the case. So very often the work teams involve a designer who's got an ID background or a graphic design background or illustration or other creative background, along with an engineer, a computer scientist, maybe somebody who has a marketing background. And that team is a kind of, just a collaborative team that brings expertise and shares that to develop a product or whatever, the goal is for that team. So there's a lot more, it's much more fluid in terms of what you studied and what you are in the professional sense of like your job title. So I would say to, simply answer your question, it's going to be a varied range of alumni from different disciplines. But if I had to guess, the majority being graphic design, industrial design, and illustration, as just as I was saying.
Yeah, and I would also, Melly, I think you might have also been referring to like what, and Susan was indicating this as well, but what areas within a company might the graduates be working in? And there's definitely a lot of UI UX, a significant amount, but RISD, and this is pretty well known, many RISD graduates take on leadership roles where they are involved in project management, project leads, and they really do rise up the ladder. I mean, we've had some extremely high level graduates working at many of these companies where they're managing lots of people as well. So there are those in the design roles, those again doing more systems and data work. And then there are those that definitely have taken on management and leadership roles as well. But UI UX is probably one of the really dominant areas within the company.
Yeah, and like equal product designers.
Yeah.
Sort of, it's not one and the same, but product design is a very typical job title, which has different meaning depending on which company, honestly. Right. There's commonality, but what a product designer does in one place or a UX UI designer does in one place is not necessarily exactly the same everywhere you go. So it's, that's what's so wonderful about being able to hear alumni talk about their paths and their trajectories, because you really begin to get an understanding for how did they maneuver into that, that area that they're in based on their interests, based on their skill sets, based on the opportunities at the time, is kind of a timing thing too involved in that often. So it's, there are a lot of ways to answer your question, I think.
And I would add one, and Millie, I would add one more thing. You can see we always have a lot to say, but RISD graduates very naturally end up in special projects and areas of research and development as well, which is really cool, because I think it's indicative of the education and how you all think as students, and that we've seen a lot of. And then on top of that, I mean, like Google Creative Labs and Google come almost every year to the portfolio review. And just the mindset of Google Creative Labs can be different than Google overall. I mean, Google is such a massive company, but that R&D side, the special project side, again, is another thing that pops up a lot with our graduates in the tech field. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. And
thank you.
Susan.
Yes, you're welcome. I'm thinking, it's so funny as we're talking about these things. I'm thinking back on the program a couple of years ago, and when we were literally we were about to leave. We're talking about departing for the trip, and we had to call it off. And so the conversation we had with students was, "What did you hope to learn? What were some of your most pressing questions that you hope to get insight on and point of view on?" And I'm thinking about those questions, and I just thought I would share what's on my mind. And Kevin, you might remember some of these, because I think they are the questions that will be answered at this second time around. So some of those questions were really specific to what does it cost to live there? What's it like if you're just starting out? What kind of salary would you earn? Would I earn enough to be able to live in a safe neighborhood, in a nice apartment? What do people do for free time? Do you have free time? Is your job all consuming? How many hours a day do you work? And what do you do all day? One student being very specific about that. Do you just keep making the same thing over and over again? Or what do you really do all day? Other questions were more specific to portfolio, actually. If I wanted to work at company X, Y, or Z, what's the portfolio I would need? What would you recommend that I do now to prepare myself to apply for a UX UI role or a product design role within tech? I've heard that in tech, all the sort of mythology of tech. I've heard, choose your myth, the thing that you've heard. I've heard that it's difficult for women in tech. Is that true? What's diversity like in the tech industry? I've heard this and that about that. So my point is